Hello everyone, my name is Joshua. This is the 53rd video of my video journal series. This is the, 2nd of April 2026. So it's that time of night where I start to get a little bit tired and I even forget the date sometimes. Like sometimes I'm afraid I'll start in one of these videos and I'll mention the incorrect journal entry number or the incorrect date. But anyway, I'm taking this entry a little bit easy because I'll be talking about how my day's been. My day's been very good, thank you. Obviously I woke up early, went to university, did some work, went to a tutorial, did some more work a little bit after, and then I wandered around the city for a bit, and I went into a JB Hi-Fi store, and this is where I got the inspiration for today's, topic, and that is going into a store right before closing. Now, I wasn't at the JB right before closing. I was like 30 minutes before they closed, which to me is like on the tail end of a little bit late. But luckily, I knew what I was getting. It was a Blu-ray disc. I just grabbed it off the shelf, paid for it, went out of the store, no issues. But as someone who worked in retail, I can definitely understand the frustration if you got like a large influx of customers coming in 30 minutes before close or 5 minutes before close, because it takes time to close down a store. You know, when I went into the JB Hi-Fi, which is like electronics, store in Australia, it's like a chain. Basically, it's kind of like Best Buy in the United States. And, I saw some of the workers, packing up, cleaning. So, it takes time to close down the store. Someone who worked in retail, I can understand. Which is like, I don't want to come into a store 5 minutes before close, because when I used to work in the retail sector, we would allow people to come in 5 minutes before close, but we're like, make it quick, and it can only be like one item sort of thing. And obviously I'll be there at front counter, so I'll be like literally just looking at my watch, going, "Come on, can this lady hurry up? She's like done 20 laps around the store, and she's doing like a full shop, you know." And in some ways, I believe that stores have the right to refuse entry to any customers like 5 minutes before the advertised close time. Because you always get that one Karen says, "Oh, your store closes at 9 o'clock. You should be open till 9." But we're like, "Yeah, we stopped taking last customers in 5 minutes before." It's like when you go to a bar, they say, "Oh yeah, last drinks 30 minutes before close," because it takes time to make the drink, person to consume the drink, and then leave the bar. All right, that's what retail stores should do. They should just adopt a universal sort of thing where it's like no customers in 5 minutes before closing, if you're doing like a single shop, but if you're preparing to do a large shop, no more than I guess like 10 minutes sort of thing. But that'll be really hard to regulate. So I guess it should just be a flat 5 minutes. That will seem fair. If a store advertises 9 p.m. close time, then last customer is 8:55. I think that's perfectly fair. And obviously things are a lot more chill because the employees are tired. You're most probably tired. Everyone wants to get this done and over with. Um, but someone who's always worked late shifts, I notice that customers, they're a lot more angrier, or I guess just antisocial. When it's like past 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, when they return from the office, they're driving home and they're like, "Oh, let's stop by this store." I noticed that in fast food and retail. I used to work, you know, predominantly in the afternoons and evenings, but I did work a few morning shifts, and I noticed that people in both um, of those sectors, fast food and retail, they seem a lot more happy and chirpy in the mornings. They always like say, "Oh, have a good day," and they're very patient. They take their time. But then when it's like yet again, I'm pretty sure like maybe after 4 or 5 o'clock ish. Obviously when everyone's returning, um, from the offices towards their homes, they're like, "Oh, let's stop by this place. I need to grab a couple of things," and they might inflict some of that anger on that underpaid teenage staff worker, which is something I had to deal with, unfortunately. Um, And I guess that's just how life works. And um, I've definitely been accustomed to that. I'm sure if you ever worked, mornings or afternoon shifts, you'll definitely notice that sort of trend or that sort of, I guess, shift from people being happy, having a good morning, saying, oh, top of the morning to you, and then they just slowly dwindle. And it's just going like, oh, why don't you promise me a refund? This is a crap quality product, sort of thing. Your boomers, who just like to, take a jab at you. But anyway, I guess, what else? I kind of like, you know, the idea of 24-hour stores here in Australia. I like to be able to go JB Hi-Fi at 3 o'clock in the morning and just look at their Blu-rays and Nintendo Switch games. Which may sound weird, but, I kind of like going to a store that's, like, not busy, because even, like, some major stores here in Australia, like Coles, Woolworths, Big W, Kmart, they're still pretty busy at, like, 8 or 9 o'clock right before they close. Like, who's going to a Big W at like 9 o'clock at night? You got better things to do on a Friday than go to Big W. I'm the only one who's supposed to go there at 9 o'clock on a Friday because I've got nothing better to do. Why is anyone else here? Come on. Like, you ever wish you just like go into a store right before close because you want that aesthetic where you got the whole store to yourself, but there's still a crap ton of people. And obviously, I'm not like anti-social or anything, but some days you just don't want to speak to anyone. You don't like the hustle and bustle of, a packed store or anything. You just want some alone time, and especially those stores can get very noisy. There's places like CX, for instance, that advertise that we have dedicated quiet hours where it's like on a Tuesday or whatever, between the hours of 6 to 7 o'clock. It's supposed to be a quiet store, to facilitate customers who may not be, used to noise. I know CX does, and I'm pretty sure like Westfields, the actual shopping center Westfield, they advertise it as well. But first of all, that's unenforceable because there's no way you can tell a Karen to shut up in a store. But second of all, like I definitely agree that there should be like quiet hours in store, maybe right before closing time, where they don't play music or anything, and customers are urged to, I guess, keep to themselves. But it's very unenforceable. I don't think I've ever seen that in practice. Um, you know, but I guess that's just my personal preference. And I guess to cap this video off, um, I really just like going to the store maybe like an hour before close. I don't want to be able to like rush anything. I just like being, right at the end, but not too close to the end, if you know what I mean. Like, I like window shopping. I like going into stores and not like buy anything, just look at all the interesting stuff they have, especially JB with all the, gadgets and, um, new games that are coming out, and you get to play on the Nintendo kiosks and PlayStation kiosks. Um, and yeah, I guess, um, in that sort of instance, yeah, I like going to stores. Too bad stores here in Australia, they close pretty early. My last point is, yeah, like, I know on Thursdays, the majority of stores I go to, they close at 9 p.m., but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, they close at like 6 o'clock. Most stores. Some of the major supermarkets, they're open until like 8 o'clock on the weekdays. Weekends, on Saturday, most of them close at 6, except the major supermarkets. They may go until like 8 o'clock. And then Sundays, I believe it's like 5 o'clock or maybe even 4 o'clock. It really depends, but all of the stores I go to, like Westfields and all that, they close around those respective times. They close like a little bit earlier. And it always made me wonder why specifically on Thursdays do they close at night and why not like Fridays? I know maybe like everyone's partying on like Friday nights and maybe that's why they like to do Thursday, but I don't really know. It's like how on Wednesdays, places like Luna Park open, for instance, because during their, I guess, off season, that is when school's in session, um, they open, I believe it's Wednesday, and I think it's on Sunday or Saturday as well. I'm not really sure with Luna Park. I just know that a bunch of like places that are catered towards like families and children, and all that, they usually open Wednesdays, which I guess is like the middle of the weekday, so it kind of makes sense. And then they're obviously on weekends because that's when you get a lot of traffic, and that's when most people are available. But yeah, why Thursdays here in at least Sydney? Um, where stores have extended trading hours. It always annoys me. I want to be able to go to like Westfields and all that at like 9 o'clock on most weekdays. But no, you're limited like 6 o'clock, and 6 o'clock is like pretty early for a store to shut. If I want to go to JB Hi-Fi, EB Games, QVD Books, or just like any store that isn't like the major supermarkets, you only really have like a small gap. Let's say if you just like clocked out of your 9 to 5 shift, then you only have like what, an hour to go to Westfields and pick up what you need from like EV Games or whatever. If you got like a, you know, someone in family who likes playing video games, that's something I don't really go understand. Maybe the weekends, but weekends are always busy. And yeah, I guess to cap this video off, I like going to stores maybe like an hour before they close, and I just like the soothing and I guess quiet shopping experience. I don't really like crowds. Um, Obviously, I like talking to people. I like hanging around with people, but I'm not much of a crowd person. I can't really deal with crowds and busy environments, and that's why I kind of avoid like the major retail stores, at least when during the day. But certainly towards the end of the night, even they sometimes get a little bit busy. But I like just taking a quick peruse, a quick browse, and oh, my last point. I know I keep on saying we're about to end this, but whatever. It's Thursday night. I can do whatever I want. Does it seem like whenever you go into a store, right? Let's say it's in the city, right? When they got multiple stores in various parts of the city, at least in the city center. So you might have one store over here, then like a couple of blocks down, you got another of that company's store, and you go into store A, you try and look around for a specific product. You ask the person up front saying, "Oh, do you have this specific product?" They're like, "No, but store B has it a few blocks away." But then you realize, hey, not too long ago, I was in store B, or I just walked by store B. But I was like, I'll go to store A. You realize store A doesn't have that product, so you're going to go all the way to store B. You're going to walk like 20 minutes to get to store B, rush through the doors, and grab the last product off the shelf and pay for it. That always seems to happen to me. It actually happened to me today with JB. I went to one of the stores in the city. We'll just name it Store A. And earlier I was around. Well, I wasn't directly near, but I was close by Store B. But I went to Store A. I did some window shopping, and I was like, I want to buy this Blu-ray disc. But then I realized they didn't have it, so I had to go all the way to Store B, which was like a 20-minute walk. And obviously, I was like counting down the time. I was like, hopefully, I make it, I make it, I make it. Grab what I needed to do. But it always seems like that way, where you go into a store and, obviously I can understand if they don't have stock or anything, but you're like, man, I was just past there not too long ago. Or when, like, you're trying to buy an item, so I know this is getting a little bit off topic, but when you try and buy an item and you see, like, all right, what source is available at? And it's like, oh, yeah, there's one available in Dubbo, but I'm like, I live in Sydney, and you're telling me I have to drive all the way to Dubbo and pick it up? EB Games is the worst offender of this. I could make a rant about this because I remember I tried to buy Luna Remastered, the Switch game, which is the remaster of Luna 1 and Luna 2 on the Nintendo Switch, which were previously released on the PlayStation 1. And I remember when EB Games released that, they didn't do. This could be its whole another video, but I'm just mentioning it here. Um, they didn't order a lot of copies of that game, so once pre-orders had finished, they, you know, didn't do anything. So I had to wait, and then eventually a copy came up, but then it was available only like some regional town in New South Wales, and you know, I think it offered delivery, but you had to like pay a lot of money for delivery. You had to like, arrange a store transfer or something like for $15, or in some instances, I believe delivery wasn't even available. And I'm like, well, first of all, it's year 2026. How are you telling me you can't freaking deliver something like a couple of 100 kilometers away? You know? But, yeah, and, they only had that product available in one regional store in New South Wales. And I guess in some ways that's just a little bit annoying, because I ended up just buying that game from Amazon UK, and I had to wait 2 weeks to play it because it took 2 weeks to ship. So that's why I'll never forgive EB Games. They're a pretty good, you know, selection of stuff since they do like PS2 games, but um, just because of the Luna Remastered thing, I'm like, come on, you made that game a store exclusive, but you only ordered enough for pre-orders, and then you're like, oh yeah, sorry, we're not selling this game anymore. What kind of logic is that? Anyway, I think that's enough of my rants, but ultimately I respect EB Games and the workers who work there, but like that little thing just kind of ticked me off and seemed a little bit anti-consumerist. But anyway, yeah, that's why I like shopping right before close. Chill atmosphere, everyone's chilled back, and you get time to yourself. Anyway, catch you all later, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Take care.